quite a bit. I've been here for most of the last month.
Good use of our National Guard to come into communities.
We've arrested thousands of criminals, taken illegal guns off the street, picked up illegal aliens, and gotten some pretty bad characters.
And intimidated people in communities and created just discord across.
All I'll say
people
is
who are wondering why there's a police state
the
in
numbers don't
Washington,
back up.
D.C.
Far-right MAGA pundit and disingenuous troll Scott Jennings was on CNN talking about Donald Trump sending the National Guard into Washington, D.C. to supposedly, quote-unquote, fight crime, and the possibility of the same happening in other cities. We're going to take a look at Scott Jennings as part of a panel with a writer from the New York Times to discuss this hot-button issue. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it together.
I want to start with you on what Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said yesterday and his latest back and forth over the president's plans. Let's listen.
It's clear that in secret they're planning this, well, it's an invasion with U.S. troops if they in fact do that. The other thing is, they ought to be coordinating with local law enforcement, but they don't want to do that either. And I must say it's disruptive. It's dangerous. It tends to inflame passions on the ground when they don't let us know what their plans are and when we can't coordinate with them.
His use of the word invasion, is that how you see it?
Invasion, no. Look, I don't like these National Guard deployments. I think that they should come with an invitation from the governor, as is historically the case. In the case of D.C., it's a little more complicated because it's within the president's power to do it here. But, what's going on in Chicago is very bad in terms of crime. It's not a crisis. And I think that the problem is it's one of these, sort of Baptist and bootlegger problems where you have, this is great for Pritzker politically, and it's great for Trump politically, to argue about crime, to argue about invasion and all these kinds of things. I just don't think it's a wise public policy.
You were smirking when you were listening to him.
Well, look, surging federal agents, ICE, CPB, to a state that has over 500,000 illegal immigrants in it, many of them live in Chicago. I mean, the federal government is going to enforce federal law. I hear Pritzker complaining that there's no coordination, but I also heard the mayor say he's ordered the police department not to cooperate with federal officials on this immigration crackdown. So how are you supposed to cooperate if the mayor is ordering his own police force not to do so? The fact is you have people in this country illegally. The president has promised since he was running his campaign last year that he planned to crack down on illegal immigration. He's sending federal agents to Illinois to do that. I'm not entirely certain why everybody is so angry or surprised about this. I mean, we're here enforcing federal immigration law in a city that we can argue about whether it's a crisis or not, but there were 53 shootings there over the weekend. It's pretty violent.
We should also be clear. They were talking about sending the National Guard in long before they were talking about this ICE operation. These two things have now become merged.
He's
saying they're on standby.
About to say this. What is it? What is happening here in Chicago? First, it's about crime, if you listen to Trump. Now, apparently, it's about immigration enforcement. I mean, when you are talking about, no wonder people are confused, no wonder people are alarmed, because if it is not clear what the purpose of these kinds of operations are, people are going to assume the worst. I mean, here in D.C., apparently it's about crime, except most of what we've seen has been immigration enforcement. Now you're going to move to a U.S. city, Chicago, where apparently it is about immigration enforcement if it's the president, but it's not. It's about crime. Like, what are we talking about?
Aren't they one and the same? Sense. If you're in the country illegally, you're a criminal.
No, that's not the same thing. And
why?
It's a civil offense if you cross the border.
Oh my gosh!
No, but wait a second. You are trying to make. Okay, you are trying to make. You are trying to say that anyone in this country illegally is some kind of murder or killer. Crime is a different thing. Shootings, muggings, the things the president talks about are different than immigration enforcement. Those are two different things. They're dealt with by different groups of law enforcement. They are two different things.
And Scott Jennings knows this. I love how the host, when she goes to him initially, says, "You were smirking during all this." This is what Scott Jennings does. He's a professional smirker and MAGA troll. That's all Scott Jennings is. But the right-wingers always do this, the conflation like that they're talking about here, in terms of, well, if you cross the border, you're a criminal. You cross the border illegally, you're a criminal. So think about it. Do you think Scott Jennings would prefer to have a next-door neighbor who is somebody who came here illegally, but is working hard and doesn't commit any crimes other than crossing the border, or somebody who has been arrested a bunch of times because they're breaking into people's homes. I mean, it's just ludicrous of Scott Jennings or any of these other MAGA types to try to act like that just because somebody crosses the border in a way that's not legal, then that automatically makes them a criminal, when we're talking about something that's a misdemeanor that's no different than getting a traffic violation. So does Scott Jennings, if Scott Jennings gets a speeding ticket, should he be deported, or should he be put in alligator Alcatraz? Again, he's there to spread misinformation and disinformation and be disingenuous. That's all Scott Jennings' role in public life is.
Conflate them is disingenuous.
I don't know why they wouldn't all need to be dealt with.
Let me just jump in, because you talked about immigration, and then you brought up what happened in Chicago over the weekend. Those are two different things. The 53 shot in Chicago over the weekend, that is true. And on that note, ABC News had this headline: 53 shot over the weekend in Chicago as governor rejects Trump's threat to send in National Guard. If you look at it through the crime prism here, what do you say to people, Adrienne, who see that headline and say, well, maybe this isn't such a bad idea?
Well, I think, look, here's what's happening. I can at least speak to what's happening here in Washington, D.C., where I've lived for the past 30 years. Yes, crime is an issue here, but sending in the National Guard is not the way to solve for this. Put more cops on the street. Give the federal government of Washington, D.C. more funds to hire more cops so that you actually have more community policing, so you have police officers who are integrated into the community that are helping to solve these issues of crime. Instead, you're sending in the National Guard, which is causing intimidation, which is causing a lot of discord among communities. We've all seen the viral videos of people being yanked off of their scooters and thrown into cars with people in masks that you're like, are these actually National Guard members? Are they ICE members? Who are these people? So the end of the day, I do agree that, yes, it's politically good. If we're going to talk about politics, politically good for Pritzker and I guess politically good for Trump. But at the end of the day, Trump is trying to use the National Guard in a way that's not being received well in communities. And I think he is going down a very dangerous path. If he's using the National Guard for this, is he going to decide that he doesn't like the way the elections are being run in 2026? Let me ask you, Scott, because is he going to use the National Guard for that?
Can I just respond to the National Guard? You told me you haven't been here all month. I've been here every week this month since they've been deployed.
I've been here all summer, Scott, except for the last 2 weeks. So I live here in Washington,
So since
DC.
National Guard's been deployed?
Yeah, but you cannot sit here and tell me that I don't know how it's affecting my community that I've lived in for a very long time.
Here's what I'm telling you. I've been walking around here all weekend and every week for the last several weeks since they've been deployed. Here's what I've seen. I've seen extremely friendly National Guard members having extremely friendly interactions. I've seen them pose for numerous pictures. Other than a few soreheads out doing protesting who tend to protest everything, I think they have been extremely well received from my observations, and they've been quite a bit. I've been here for most of the last month.
Good use of our National Guard to come into communities.
We've arrested thousands of criminals, taken illegal guns off the street, picked up illegal aliens, and gotten some pretty bad characters.
And intimidated people in communities and created just discord across.
All I'll say
people
is
who are wondering why there's a police state
the
in
numbers don't
Washington,
back up.
D.C.
The numbers don't back up the contention that this has been hugely effective. What you've seen absolutely is a huge diminution, crime going down, as one would expect when you have a huge surge of law enforcement. But obviously, you can't sustain that, right? That isn't policing. That isn't looking at the long-term, kind of plan for a community. That is a surge of forces, which happen in many places, and it just shows that there really aren't any policies in place here. But what you've seen in terms of arrests, actually not many more arrests than you have seen at other periods of time here. So, what is the actual effect of this crime surge? I think you'll look back and say, sure, crime went down for a very limited period of time.
The mayor says that.
The mayor for a very limited period of time. What does that mean for the actual safety and security of Washington, D.C. long term? What are the policies here? National Guard on the streets, you would have to admit, is not a policy proposal.
And do what the mayor said of Washington, D.C., which is give me more law enforcement. Give me more funds so that I can hire more police officers so that we have a very, very effective community policing strategy.
Right.
Instead of sending in the National Guard, who doesn't know this community, who doesn't know, who doesn't have these relationships in these neighborhoods. Which is very
Let me get to this.
And I believe that's spot on what she is saying there. And Scott Jennings talks about the soreheads, quote unquote, which is an odd term, out protesting. The right hates protest. They hate protest of any kind. It doesn't matter if it's nonviolent protest. They hate it all. They don't believe in protest. A guy like Scott Jennings, if he'd been around during the Boston Tea Party, he would have been saying, look at these radical extremists dumping tea into the harbor. They should be locked up. And this is nothing more than a show of force from Donald Trump and the Trump administration. This is all about playing into the narrative that people like Scott Jennings have parroted for years and years and years, that Democrats are weak on crime. We're seeing it with the Ukrainian girl who was killed. Democrats are weak on crime, and these judges just want to let criminals go, blah, 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 blah. That's all this is. It's all political. It doesn't have anything to do with reducing crime. Scott Jennings and the rest of MAGA won't admit that crime is down in Washington, D.C. From 2023 to 2024, it was down. Nationwide, crime is down 30%. In cities like Los Angeles, it's down 30%. But they want to make out like we're all living in these ultra-violent hellscapes. It's all nothing but being disingenuous, as the other guest said to Scott Jennings. And that's his role on TV, just like all of MAGA. Let me know what you think about this. Do you agree with what Scott Jennings had to say on CNN? Do you agree with the counter arguments? Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I am Chris on Culture, and I'll see you in the next video.